Hi, welcome to the stream this morning. There he goes again. So the last week's streams were kind of more focused on reverse engineering. I was trying to satisfy some curiosities about how this old voting machine that I picked up on eBay a while ago, how it had been modified from a standard sort of 486 embedded PC and how it boots. So we were looking into that. But one of the other ongoing projects here is Tuco Flyer, which is a robot that flies around the lab and hangs out with my cat. And it's been at this point right now where there are a lot of things that we could be fixing or improving, and I've been, to some extent, waiting on making more progress on the documentation side before I just rush into development. But I think everybody's in the mood to do some more development today, so despite being behind on video editing, I think today we'll do some more Tuco Flyer debugging and development work. He is just such a bossy cat lately. I just can't even deal with it sometimes. There he is again. He'll just do this thing where if I'm not exactly where he wants me to be, like if I'm upstairs and he wants me to be downstairs, or if I'm sitting at my desk and he wants me to be on the floor or whatever, then he just yells at me constantly. Now he's eating. I think I have the maximum speed turned up way too high right now. So I was trying some experiments, and so it's actually really way too easy to get one of the winches under tensioned. As is the case right now. That's right. If I go fast, then the tension algorithm doesn't keep up, and if I go slow, then the hysteresis, or the lack of hysteresis in the winches oscillates. So those are two pretty severe problems. There's also another pretty severe problem, which I've been repeatedly running into, where there's an oscillation between the this recovery feature that's designed to keep the gimbal from staying in a state that's drawing excessive power or oscillating in the motors. And that particular feature is interacting badly with the computer vision sometimes. Hey, Tuco. I'm having mobility issues now because of that one cable that has excessive slack in it. So yeah, right now the way that it tries to keep the winch from getting overly slack in one cable is really just like if it's already in the danger zone, well then it tries to back off. It doesn't try to plan ahead. So that's a major thing that the software needs to work on. Oh yeah. Can I show you what's going on from this angle? Oh, my DSLR is all unplugged this morning because I was using it off the stand this weekend. Oh yeah, so that thing where it jerks to the side and then back to Tuco is one of the many manifestations you might see from that oscillation between the computer vision and the anti-oscillation feature. And so if you just see me get extremely frustrated at this robot and curse at it all the time, this is one of many reasons why. It just needs work, and this is one of those bugs that just keeps being extremely annoying. And this isn't even in maybe the top 2 or 3 at this point in terms of annoying bugs, so there's a lot to work on. Something else I would consider a bug is that it's just super power hungry on the computer vision even when it doesn't need to be. So I've been wanting to add like a sleep mode so that when the robot doesn't need to be actively running the computer vision algorithms, it cannot. And then my rack would stay a little bit cooler. Oh, and that oscillation that you're hearing is also a bug. Normally I would back up, except now I can't back up because of the other problem where the cable is a little slack, and so I'm gonna have to stop trying to put my camera together and go back over there and try to actually fix it manually. Be right back. Bro, you're not helping. Oh yeah, and now I'm losing control for multiple reasons. There we go. Nope. Okay, Twitch is down. I'll fix that in a second. Stop. Oh man, this particular bug is extremely annoying. Okay. Twitch is down. Why is Twitch down? Herbert on YouTube chat is asking if I fixed the gear and replaced the others. I fixed the one that broke, but I haven't had to fix the others yet. The others have been fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they break at some point, but so far I haven't had trouble with the others. I know Twitch is down. I'm working on it. The thing that seemed to work last time was killing the FFmpeg process on my transcoder. Let's see if that does it. And a new one springs up. Do we have transcode? If I'm lucky, this might be the beginning of the Twitch stream. I don't know if I'm that lucky though. Oh, it looks like we might have Twitch. Great. Yeah, sorry about that. It looks like the stream did not start up properly on Twitch, so we lost a couple minutes of me mostly just being frustrated at the robot and rambling. Welcome back to the stream. Yeah, so welcome on Twitch and on YouTube. So this is the sort of Tuesday scheduled stream. Last week we'd been doing a lot of work on just random reverse engineering with the goal of trying to maybe figure out how the this old voting machine I bought on eBay was customized relative to the kind of system on chip and kind of standard PC architecture it was based on. So this time I'm actually going back to TucoFlyer, which I've been avoiding making too much progress on it until I could get another video edited showing just the progress made so far, because I feel like we're a little behind in just having documentation on that project. But that's, you know, I can't just like wait on that indefinitely, so here we are. Let's make some more progress on debugging the robot. There's plenty to debug. Right now the hardware is in a basically built and working state, and it just has a long tail of things that need to be implemented and or debugged. And so that's where we're at right now. I also know the audio's out of sync, I just have not gotten around to debugging that, sorry. Tuco's just been yelling at me so much lately, and I just can't concentrate on anything. It's like the moment I actually start to get anything done with video editing or answering emails or like just doing anything that I'm trying to do, he's just yelling at me every 5 seconds because he wants to play. Yeah, now he's probably just gonna get into something. Does Chico sleep during the day? I mean, he sleeps a lot at night and during the day. I mean, he's also active a lot at night and during the day. I don't really understand his rituals. I mean, some of it makes sense, but like he'll sleep upstairs, like just next to me a lot of the time. He'll just sleep right up next to my pillow. But then if I'm upstairs, just like on my computer or something, then he won't want to hang out next to me. He'll want to just yell at me from the bottom of the stairs. And that's been just really getting on my nerves lately. It's like I can't get anything done if it's not on his schedule. Yeah, and it's like I love to play with him, and so a lot of the time, you know, he'll yell at me and I'll come and play and that'll be fine, but, you know, usually the thing is I can't do it right away. I need like 15 minutes or something, and he doesn't understand that, and he is not willing to let up for even a moment. Yeah, I would never say that I own Tuco. We're definitely just like roommates and or, you know, I'm kind of like his minion. Check. Check, check. Cool. Oh, stop that autofocus. Sometimes Servo AF gets completely the wrong idea. Alright, anyway, and then camera, what do we got over here? That Wi-Fi thing was useful in the wall when I was doing workshops, but now it's just like always in the way when I'm doing videos. So yeah, that's what we've got so far. It's pretty much put together. It needs an outer skin. The sensors probably need some tweaking. Here's the leash, kind of going up here. Yeah, that whole thing needs a little bit of work. That one pulley on the top is really not optimal. I mean, that whole thing was just kind of kludged together, so I've been thinking about redesigning that using 2 pulleys so that the monofilament doesn't actually scrape against anything else as it moves around. Herbert's asking if I can make the camera track other objects for debugging purposes. Yeah, sure. Alright, there's a bunch of stuff that we could work on that's all fairly high priority. I don't know, one of my favorites might be the additional code in the Rust side of this that loads customizations into the gimbal parameters. So right now that's just immediately going to get in the way. Next time we power cycle the gimbal, we're going to have to manually enter a bunch of parameters. No. Okay, are there some parameters we can tweak, like, right now before I throw this controller across the room in frustration? Oh yeah, Tuke, why don't you explore the trash pile? That'll make for some great cinematography. Why am I getting no data here? were we just changing a bunch of protocol? Is this partly broken here? Oh god. Did we not actually finish making this change so the messages are opt-in? This doesn't help when I'm listening to the microphone through the headphones. Let's just unplug this. Okay, the fonts look worse than usual. I have not changed anything, no. Can you be more specific? Which font? Where? On what device? At what resolution? Was I here? Yeah. Do we just need to rebuild the client, maybe? What? Oh, do I actually not have the bot server running? That's a problem. Tuco, you're such a jerk sometimes. Why? Dude. Let's also start the development server, because I'm going to want one of those too. Okay, the last thing I want is people trash-talking Rust because this particular project takes a while to compile. Rust compilation's actually gotten a lot faster lately, and I have the optimization settings turned up higher than default here because otherwise my program doesn't quite keep up with the incoming data. But the last thing I want from this chat room is programming language elitism or snobbery based on incomplete information. Okay, so we had this incomplete thing sitting around in the repo where I was pulling the client code out into a separate repository, but even without that finished, the client is working. I just had to actually rebuild it so that I'm using the latest protocol. And this will actually show at least some of the problems we were having. Let's take go. I mean, that comment might have been based on experience, but it was clearly an extreme exaggeration, and so, like, I don't know what purpose that could have other than to just complain or to try to scare people off from, I think, a language that deserves a lot more than such a cursory dismissal. So that's how I feel about that, FYI. This is fine as long as we don't try to aim too far down. I'm also just hitting the noises are several other problems combining together. So the oscillation is a problem, right? We are trying to fix that by just having the gains on the gimbal tuned better. And right now the gains are a little bit better than factory, but still not great, and there is no system for actually recording those and like loading them back into the gimbal when it starts. So until that's there, then I don't really need to spend time tuning gains because there's nowhere to save those values. And then then there's this secondary and tertiary problem where the oscillation causes this sort of recovery, this oscillation detector to trip. And then that spends actually, I think, too long in the lockout mode. And then the combination of moving the gimbal without resetting the computer vision tracking rectangle causes the computer vision to then try to move the gimbal back to where it was, and then the two loops fight each other. So there are probably like 2 or 3 separate bugs in there to take care of. What are you doing, Tuco? Alright, so some of the duration of that response is actually the duration of the physical oscillation and not just the recovery. Definitely the first step to fixing that would be to have it reset the computer vision tracking. I think this is too big. part of me is frustrated with the way that there's such a distinct transition, like a state transition between when this error duration passes the threshold and beforehand, and so the behavior changes abruptly. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. But the actual physical state change we're tracking is that rapid ramp up of the oscillation, which is actually pretty fast. And so having more squishiness at that boundary, I don't think would actually be as helpful as it might seem. So stuff like this needs to happen outside this module also, I think. So I think maybe the status, like, I don't know, like this check could probably happen elsewhere. I could probably just have a public method that you could call to say on a status, given a config is a rehoming in process, which would just be like one way of centralizing this determination just a little bit. But inside the module, there are a couple places where that leads to resetting state. So like this is the gimbal hold algorithm. It just remembers particular magnetic encoder angles that we want to keep stable while the gimbal isn't moving. And so we reset that, which is great, but we don't also reset the computer vision rectangle. So if the computer vision rectangle happens to get stuck on the edge of the screen, then it'll keep triggering an increase in the PID gain, or the PID, it'll keep causing a proportional nudge, and then also keep building up the integrators in the tracking loop. So really, both the integrators and the rectangle should be reset. Where is the gimbal control status defined? Oh, these headphones are great. I should just stream wearing earplugs. I'm like trying to imagine situations where it could be useful to know the actual kind of fuzzy error status, like how long it's been since we started tracking an out of range condition. Is it tempting to just replace this with a Boolean? I guess I couldn't replace it because even if other modules don't care about this, I do want to log it, and this is also how I've been doing the logging. This module knows about config, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's right, we have a couple of different thresholds. There's the power off threshold, which is pretty severe. That's like, we haven't been able to fix the problem, just turn off the motors. I don't think we need a method for this. I think we can always just assume this is a threshold that we get out of the config. So let's keep this simple. So effectively just want something kind of like this check, but outside the gimbal module. This isn't the module that does tracking, is it? Oh, it is. Maybe we're not even sending it that far. We do want to clear the integrators. The rectangles are elsewhere, right? Yeah, tracked region. Let's do this. I always get my copy-paste modifiers backwards. So just always switching between operating systems. This might be useful too. This is how we reset the angles that we're using as references while the gimbal is stationary. And unless we reset these as the gimbal is swinging back toward the home position, then we'll oscillate. Yeah, this was part of the problem, is we would actually change the loop so that we didn't update the PID during rehoming, but we didn't clear the integrator. That plus the computer vision. Okay, where's the vision? we not have any way of resetting the rectangle right now? I used to. Right now when you're halted, so there's the red border around the screen, the robot isn't moving. That used to mean that the tracking rectangle would reset, but I think maybe right now it just means we don't make any action based on it. How often is tracking update called? Is that every tick? That is indeed once per tick. I think I should stick this in as sort of a prioritized condition in between manual control and the computer vision control. And do we have access to the last gimbal status here? Huh, where is the gimbal status? Tracking update. I think at this layer I should calculate like a tracking reset flag that I pass to the tracking update. I don't think tracking update should get the entire gimbal status. So we have that. We also have a local config, which is a dynamically updated config. This is the one that gets update messages. We're running on the same thread that actually has mutable access to that. Not that we need it mutable here, but why does tracking update need a config? Probably a bunch of reasons. Yeah, a bunch of reasons. just reinitialize that. I think so. There is a minimum tracked region size. Actually, I'm curious where that gets set up, because I could be missing something if that isn't. Yeah, tracking min area and default area, where are those set up? Did I lose my search window? Cool. So that's only used for determining whether we can use a tracked region. That used to work differently when our tracking algorithm was set up to detect scale changes, but I disabled that to save lots of CPU. It was not fast enough without that. Default area. Oh, why are we setting that up in the manual controls? I guess, I mean, at one point I had this set up so that the default rectangle actually did have this size. It looks like now I'm just using it for manual, which seems fine. That just means I can distinguish between the condition of having like a default rectangle and a manually adjusted rectangle, because the manual one will have a non-zero size, and the default one, the way it's set up now, is a zero size rectangle in the center of the screen. So it won't trigger any of the gain rectangles, but it also won't be visible, and it's distinct from the kind of rectangle you would get from either the computer vision or the manual setup. Yeah, so let's just default this to camera tracked region new. Should the manual updates be frozen while we're rehoming? I think probably not. That's probably an improvement. Let's try compiling that while I think about what to do next. Oh, that's an option. Oh, I have a gimbal status up here, which is not an option. Let's just use that. And this one. This function is a little bit gross. It's like it does a couple of slightly different things that have some overlapping functionality that I should maybe try to factor out. Current error. Oh, that's right. Yeah, let's take that before we actually lose a reference to gimbal status. Got the stream started a little bit early today, but welcome if you're joining in the actual scheduled time of 11. We're just doing a lot of random work on the Tuco Flyer bot today. All right. If I did that right, I think we just broke the feedback loop that causes that really annoying problem where it goes back and forth between the gimbal anti-oscillation algorithm and the computer vision. Okay, that was me. But there it is, and yeah, that's great. And the computer vision basically stays disabled from the point where it hits that oscillation to either the next manual control or object recognition. So if it was actually trying to track Tuco, then it would keep trying to track him. Or if I was actually pressing, like I can just hold it down and it does that, which is kind of similar to what it was doing before. But if I'm not holding it down, it returns normal, which is great. Oh, is Tuco around? Is he sitting on my desk chair? No? Where is he? It would be kind of nice to have a visual indicator also that the gimbal is vibrating. Just like maybe some kind of like indicator around the perimeter of the screen or something. I mean, it's kind of obvious to me when it's no longer taking my controls briefly, but it might make things a little bit easier to see from a distance. All right, that was an improvement. Let's check that in. All right, what should we do next? Yeah, how would we do that parameter customization on startup? The goal here is to effectively just have a list of stuff we can load into the space in kind of a custom way. This screen shows the entire parameter space of the gimbal, which is 128 of these 16-bit numbers for each axis. And right now you can just see the values going in and out during normal operation. So these blue values are being pulled by the controller software, and the red ones are being written to. And then the blue ones that kind of fade right away are just being pulled infrequently. What am I doing with this? So we already know if the motor is on or off at this point, because we're pulling these motor status flags. What was that actually for? Motor status. Oh, maybe that's just that we can return motor power status. Yeah, so if the supply voltage ever goes outside the range we have set, even for one tick, or if there's a prolonged error from the oscillation slash overcurrent detector, then we turn off the motors. So when would we want to actually send parameters to the gimbal? I mean, we could just basically register an infrequent poll operation for all the parameters, such that just every, n seconds, you look at that parameter, and if it's not the value you expect, then you send it. But if it was like, you can imagine if they bunched up all at once, then that could be kind of bad. You start to have to think about scheduling those if you do have that giant block of commands all being issued at the same time. It might be fine, because there's already a layer of scheduling there. All the outgoing commands get interleaved between the parameter requests. But I don't, for example, have a way of saying these requests are more important than these others. The current system where some requests pull continuously, whereas some pull on a timer, might actually come close enough to that behavior, though. This might not be a terrible place to walk through the config and at least be sure that we infrequently verify. That also might have the side effect of, if the config changes, I mean, this is all kind of inefficient because it's like polling, and if we wanted this to be the kind of cleanest and most scalable architecture, then maybe you'd want something where you're propagating changes through rather than just polling a bunch of things. That said, I think that given we are actually just pulling so much of this, because it is a control loop, I'm actually not that fussed by maybe just every time we hit this 250 hertz tick, taking a look at the timestamps on all the configuration values. I think that is actually a pretty reasonable thing to do at this point. And one side effect there is that when the config changes, you'll actually get a pretty rapid response with the gimbal changing, so it'll be pretty natural to update those parameters. We should be able to just hook up configs using the existing web UI, and then see those change in the gimbal internals panel. Let's do that. I think that means that the config file is just going to have gimbal config options as their numeric register values, which is a little bit obtuse, but flexible. I wonder if we could have an option to have a named parameter. How many of these do we have names for? We have a decent number of names. Oh. Is it worth bothering with trying to make that some kind of multi-type thing? Like it could be, I don't think I want to make it a string. I don't think I want to make it, also everything that goes in config has to be serializable as JSON and YAML. And I mean, if these were a Rust enum, we would get some of this serialization for free, but then we wouldn't have any support for values that are not part of the enumeration. I think it might be simplest just to use a U8 here. Littering this with extra characters. Okay, so we have some overlay stuff for the gimbal, we have vision stuff, then we have the actual gimbal config. I want this to be a map so that the JSON or YAML can treat it as a dictionary. And we're using the tree map for that. Yeah. If this is going to be JSON, though, I think the keys have to be strings. Oh, maybe this, yeah, maybe serialize will take care of mapping those. Because here, I mean, this schedule turns into a JSON dictionary where these naive times are strings. But I think it's fine if it's something that's convertible into a string. Let's try using U8s there. We could make a fancier data type that is convertible from string and knows about some of the constants that are relevant here, but for starters, I just want to try just like a hex value. Can we get away with hex here? It's I16, not S16, I know. Just wanted to check up there. We could try that. I mean, this actually needs to be Do we want to keep the axes separate? It's probably alright to, well, no. There are actually some config values where I only want to do this on a single axis. I don't know if we can do this as a map, but as a list it would definitely work. Just so we could have a list of gimbal value data structures. I don't think I can key a map off of gimbal value address and have it still serialized into a JSON dict. And it's just unfortunate if I was to use a list that I couldn't really rely on the indices in the list, which would make it harder to write the front end. Because right now it's easy for me to just drop in some HTML that refers to a particular item by its index, or a particular key in the dictionary by its, or a particular value by its key. So maybe I have... I could just allow, I could allow slots to be none, so I could have an option I16 in there. I could have a vector of option I16. Which would be really easy to use from the JavaScript side. Would look a little bit weird from Rust, but what would that look like? I've never tried making a vector of option before. I don't know if that's going to work. This is, and note, this is not the Rust vec. This is the vecmath vector 3. So it's basically a fixed length array, which will definitely work, but I don't know how many of the other functions will be happy with this. I don't think I care. I don't think I'm using a lot of the other functions with this particular data type. It's just handy to think of it as a vector. I think this might work. And then what would that look like? Values. And let's write down the gains that I have in here. And maybe the calibration points, why not? I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with doing hex right there. So on the YAML side, you don't have to explicitly say sum or whatever, because it assumes that the option just means that null is now a possibility, then the option is implicit. But that will be important on the Rust side. So like on here, we should just be able to give it something that looks like a normal vector. And that's the calibration point 0, aka the center. Here's calibration 1, aka OX64. So calibration point 1 is based on where the flux is strongest for the first phase in the three-phase motor controller. And due to symmetry, there are 6 different points that are all equally good for each axis here. Oh, maybe that's why the gimbal's been so annoying. I think these are the factory gain parameters, not the ones we had customized. In param 62 here, I think this is the right place. So this is yaw, this is roll, this is pitch. I'm pretty sure we had roll turned down to like 200 and the other two around 400. Let's check that out. These are also all generic sliders, so they all go from like minus 32K to plus 32K, so the range is really useless for what I'm doing here. But yeah, with these gains tweaked just right, I can aim the camera pretty much all the way down. In fact, I can go a little further than straight down, which is not even necessary. So yeah, the lack of automatic, like these parameters currently, I haven't been storing them to non-volatile memory, so anytime I reset the gimbal, these get lost. Let's see if that's better. Whoa, Wobble Town. Okay, maybe not. That was me cutting the power. Okay, a little higher than 200. Ooh. Okay, maybe that. 280-ish. Yeah, okay, that's better. A little bit of a tone when it starts vibrating, but not the terrible wobble. Oh yeah, there's a question about whether there's a video about me building the web interface for this. I did most of that work off stream because mostly the software stuff has been stuff people don't really want to watch live. I haven't made a edited video about the software yet really, but that's something I plan on doing. think Tuco's still over there. Oh, I don't want to reload actually, thanks. Let's see if that parses. Ah, that's great. It looks like I inspired Jan to also check out Rust and code in Rust from the YouTube chat. Glad to hear it. It's a nice language. I mean, I've been writing C and C++ code for a long time, and I've also fallen in love with many higher level languages. But Rust has been pretty nice so far, and somewhat unique as far as being something that, you know, inspires me to, you know, want to write more code and want to kind of use more language abstraction while also, you know, not having nearly as many kind of misfeatures as older languages like C and C++ tend to. So it's like just refreshing to have a modern language that's also just really suitable for embedded systems and low latency stuff and code where you need to have that kind of higher degree of what's going on with the system from millisecond to millisecond. Okay, right, it wants actual YAML arrays here, not Python tuples. Cool. If we get this to write the file back out, then we should get to see its interpretation of that, yeah. So it converted those to decimal, it looks like. I don't know where Tuco is right now. Camera seems stable though. Alright, so we've got these values in the gimbal config now. Okay, so this is the early stage of what the gimbal control loop here is trying to do, and I guess I should clarify, not the control loop that's running on the gimbal, but one of the control loops in the robot control software, which is responsible for controlling the gimbal. So it needs to make some determinations about whether the gimbal state that we know of in the Rust side is accurate, and it needs to actually read that state in, make determinations about what to do next, and then send commands to the gimbal. That's the control loop we're talking about here. So it's reading a bunch of values from the gimbal and keeping track of whether the cached values here are up to date with this stale flag. And so I'm wondering if maybe I should actually have the config poll also have the opportunity to unset that stale flag. Let's maybe extend this request to be like requests from config. And let's keep the params in a similar order. So config, then gimbal, then mute stale flag. tempting to put the request type up here too, because really all the requests, yeah, I don't know, their config should never be allowed to do frequent or continuous requests, just these infrequent requests. So here's a request type. Oh, how do I iterate over a hash map or a B-tree map? I think it just gives me key value tuples, but let's just double check that. Sometimes I get distracted and I'm like scrolling through this document while thinking about an unrelated part of the program. It's like the words will just be flowing by in front of my face while I'm like, oh, how does this other thing work? How am I going to do this other thing? And that's probably pretty disorienting for everyone involved. Anyway, what I'm here for is iter. Yeah, iter key value, that seems fine. Oh, the color scheme changed. Is this right? I don't know if I want to handle staleness inside here in the same way. I mean, I could also go right to the slot API. I kind of don't want to bypass this layer here, though. Let's see. Okay, so this is asking for a cached request, so a cached value from the configuration of a single microcontroller on the gimbal. And if the cache is old, then it'll set item is stale and return an old or default value. So if either item is stale or if value is not the value we're actually trying to set, let's set that to cached value. So actually, I want to make two different determinations. One is, should we consider the whole thing to be stale, like to need more progress? I don't want to get into a situation where we only send a single config option per iteration. I want to just send them all and then move on. Yeah, so we could wait for the cache to be replenished and then check, but that actually doesn't save any time. Like, it's better just to send the value if we don't know that it's correct. So yeah, if use the gimbal slot API for this. Something like that, right value. Let's see why that won't compile. That just might be an extra ampersand there. Cool. Okay, so that is a reference already. Okay. That's funny. Yeah, we have a reference to a U8 there because that's what we're iterating over. We can dereference it and make a copy implicitly. I think I can actually just put ref in front of that. Oh geez, I wanted the opposite of that. Cool, and then 308. That's supposed to be gimbal.write value. Cool, we're checking these parameters periodically. I think we can add some stuff to the UI here. Let's make sure we're in the, or we are able to switch to the development version of the UI actually. I don't actually have that running right now, do I? Should these go on the same page? Gimbal internals. Let's just say configuration for now. Yeah, so something pretty basic like this. This definitely will not support hexadecimal. I'll have to convert these to decimal at least. That was what, 77 and 100? These are 12-bit magnetic encoder values. Alright, and this is gyro feedback scale OX62. This one, let's bump this down to like, I don't know, 1,000 seems like the most I would ever want this to be. I don't know if that's actually stabilization gain. I'm gonna try to give it a slightly more specific name. Scale for gyro feedback. There we go. Do we not have that? 92? Oh, 98. Yes, 98. Okay. These probably don't need to be on the same panel. Let's move those to setup. Configuration. Let's just stick this kind of out of the way because I don't want to have to accidentally mess the stuff up. I was thinking it would be useful to have it on the same page as the internals, but I think we just want these in side-by-side windows for now. So this is the gain over N62. So I should be able to change this and have that show up over here pretty much immediately. Can't adjust this. It's kind of acting like the step is set to 0, but I don't think that's what's going on. It's acting more like I'm sending messages to change it, and those messages aren't having an effect. Am I not logged in? Really? Oh! Oh, that's my bug. Yeah, it's generating a config update here, and it actually doesn't know the difference between a sequence and a map. So it's just generating sequences, which is not right. Geez, I might have to change this, the way this format works slightly in the JavaScript side. It assumes that numbers go in sequences and other things go in maps, which is not accurate here. Imagining different ways of solving this. One idea that comes to mind is to make everything a dictionary instead of a sequence, and then just make it legal to apply a dictionary of updates to a sequence on the server side of this config update mechanism. I mean, I can think of other ways of maybe having some way of distinguishing between arrays and sequences in, because like this is the source here. We're dealing with go from a string like this to a JSON structure, which then gives you a partial update to the config database. So that right there is perhaps too ambiguous of an operation to be asking for. So if the config database didn't mind kind of treating these two different kinds of key namespaces as the same, then maybe I can just use a single data type for the updates. So that would look like removing this case. So either we already have the object in there, or we're creating it as a nested object, but we don't bother with nested tuples, or sorry, nested lists or sequences of any kind. Does that work? I think that works. Because we do the merge in JSON space, not in our strongly typed space. So with that change by itself, that'll just break a bunch of stuff. We can make a corresponding server-side change that fixes it again. Wow, why are we failing the API completely now? Oh, that's normal because we're on the dev server. Never mind, that's a expected error at this point. So yeah, most of these config updates will fail with a similar message: invalid type, map, expected an array. So let's fix that server side. Yeah, see, we had a kind of other hack down here that wasn't too good, where I was expecting the types to match up, but if you have an array, we sort of assume that nulls mean skip that element, which is definitely an exception in the type system to normal behavior and not something that's great. Can I just remove this behavior? I don't think anybody relies on this behavior other than the thing that we're changing. We do allow a null for deleting down here, but I think that's fine. Yeah, I think we can just make this behavior specific to updating an object, which is a map in this case. Is our base always going to be correctly formatted? Yeah, so this is serializing the existing config. So this will always be the types that the serializer generates. Then we're starting the merge there and then deserializing it. So if I removed this case entirely, then we would treat a value like a generic object where we just overwrite the whole thing. Or sorry, treat an array like a generic object. I think that... I'm probably going to break something if I remove that. I think I might leave this in. This is not a bad behavior. I think I just want another behavior also. I think I might want to factor out some of the common behavior here, though. Like maybe make this more like an array. I'm not sure what to do here if the key is not convertible into an integer. This merge procedure does not return any errors because the intention is that the step after this catches the errors when this doesn't match the type we intend. But it means that something like that wouldn't really be, like I can't really report that error easily from here. So I could have this whole thing start throwing results back to the caller. Also, if you gave it a really large number, you could just trivially get this thing to allocate way too much memory, so that also might be something to, I mean, I haven't, actually hardening this program against denial of service from the client would be a long job that would require a lot of additional steps, but this is one of the large gaping holes in that right now, is the client can just ask the server to allocate lots of memory. Small screwdrivers fit pretty well into a 1/4-inch jack. Maybe updating an array with a map should not be able to create new elements. There's a way to just avoid having to put specific constraints on the size and also the type, and just say that this particular mechanism only works if the key's already there. Yeah, maybe this should just be a separate function so that if this fails, or, I mean, it doesn't need to be a separate function, we can just fall back to the same condition where we're copying the whole object. And then that will typically just cause a failure immediately afterwards because we're expecting an array and we got a map. It's maybe the best option right here. Not that it's a great option. Yeah, I think I should separate these out a little bit. What is an array specifically? It's like I want to make this a function. I have to think a little bit more about what that data type actually is. I think it's a vec of values. Let's see what those are called. Oh, this window's stuck sometimes. Map is a local map type, isn't it? I guess I should import this map also. Do you actually want to, in the event that this fails, I want to kind of undo this conversion as well. And it's tempting to actually just make these like return paths. And then just make that the default. I don't know, it's like not quite as satisfying in some ways, but it's actually simpler in other ways. So I want to know if the value in there is convertible to a U size or something like that. I think I basically just want to know if it's a number, but see if there's a specific question I can ask via this JSON value class or enum. Yeah, I think we want like as U64, unless there's an as U size. No. cold over here. I should drink my coffee, but now it's probably cold too. Yep, I'll be right back. That's right, our update actually was not supposed to be a reference this whole time. I think we do want to consume the update. Thanks, Tuco. Let's make this spot comfortable for you. That's right. So in JSON we do actually have to use strings in this spot. Hey, Tuco. Hanging out with this cat is so much better than making robots to hang out with the cat, which has always been the problem with technology. I'm just here making stuff because that's what I know how to do, and that's what you all want to see, apparently, but hanging out with the cat is always going to be better than making stuff that the cat will eventually maybe appreciate or maybe not appreciate. Don't eat a battery, Tuco. I know they're tasty. You can lick me, just don't lick the desk, alright, Tuke? So I'm gonna like brush this guy after he's been on my desk so he doesn't have bits of metal on him. Oh, how's that, Tuke? I mean, this is the same thing that I was doing on the JavaScript side. I'm just moving it into Rust where we have more visibility into the actual types that we're supposed to have. So that's fine. I forget how this works. String.parseInt. Okay, there's a parse. So I could parse as like usize, for example. That should automatically detect the type as usize because I'm comparing it to the base here and then using it as a index. Just that doesn't return an option, that returns an error or a result. Thanks, Tuco. Oh, Tuco, don't get in there, honey, please. Oh, you can't infer the type, okay. Yeah. So then this actually doesn't work because we're consuming update here. I was hearing that Tuco was chewing on something noise, but it was cat food, which is okay. That's the fundamental problem here, is that when we fail this, we're not actually returning ownership of the update. So this one specifically does actually need to take a reference, I think. Yeah, I mean, there might be fancier ways to do this that don't involve copying the data, but I think maybe right here I want to copy this data. So instead of into iter, I'll use a regular non-consuming iter. The key, I can still deal with a reference there through parse. Oh. Oh, and this has also already got that as an array. I don't know, man. Maybe that return thing was alright. I don't like either of these options. Tuco, what was that noise? I think he's playing Bolt in the bathroom by himself. Oh, did you find a bug, Tuco? Tuco is a better debugger than I am. Alright, let's go back to the debug site. The gains, firmware configuration. Does it work this time? Look at that. That's what it was supposed to be doing. We just needed to implement a kludge over the API gaff that we've managed to include. All right. This is great. These are now being saved in the config file persistently. It's part of the rest of the config infrastructure. That's great. Let's break this up into committable changes, maybe. So what do I have? I do actually like having a graphical diff viewer, even though I'm pretty comfortable with the git command line and just really like the command line in general. Like, I've always liked having a graphical diff viewer, and git TK is kind of annoying. And I've used Tower on macOS for a while, but it seems like GitHub Desktop is basically all the functionality I liked from Tower, but now it's free instead of shareware. So the actual gimbal controller, we mostly just got this new thing that instantiates, or that pulls these configured values that we're requesting to be in the cache. And there is some new configuration structure. The actual configuration UI for a few of these options so far. And this is the change we just made to basically fix support for configuration maps with numeric keys, because that was just broken. Let's do the schema changes first then. So yeah, let's make one commit that just has config and config. What are you doing, honey? Tuco is definitely a literal debugger. He hunts down like flies and tiny moths, and sometimes spiders. I like spiders, but sometimes Tuco hurts spiders, which is unfortunate. Hey, Tuco. Hey, dude. Where to? what should be next? I'm having a really low stream dealing with stuff energy kind of day, but maybe we just need to keep trying to get stuff done. This is why I haven't made a lot of progress on this particular stuff, is I keep having like really no energy to do this on stream because it just feels like programming streams just haven't worked out super well. And then mostly I just want to work on documenting what we've done so far, since I feel like that's still so behind. Oh, Tuco, stop that. Dude, no. Dude. I could also just spend pretty much full-time, 24/7, every day, every waking hour, just trying to organize the lab so that Tuco doesn't destroy things constantly. Anything else we can do here? So we just finished this one, the gimbal parameter customization. There's a lot more to do, but Tuco's just gonna keep yelling at me, and I'm gonna keep being depressed, and I'm gonna keep not liking software streams, and I should probably just wrap this up and do some video editing so that I can try to accomplish something useful today. Yeah, Tuco's just gonna be yelling at me all day. It's great. I want to start fixing the tension control algorithm. I want to have a height estimator. I want to have coordinate systems for the camera. There are a lot of really cool fundamental stuff fundamental things I want to do here. I just can't always do this stuff with a yelling cat and an audience. Yeah, I don't think this is working. I don't know if I'm cut out to do this streaming stuff. I don't know if I should be doing any of this. I just can't really. It's like I'm doing this because I thought it would be useful to share some of this. I'm usually much happier to be by myself, and I don't really like the experience of sharing this most of the time when I do it. So if I don't like it and it's not actually that useful, then I should probably just find something else to do with my time. If I don't like it and it is useful, then I'll keep doing it. But I get the impression that most of the people who hang out and watch these streams are just like really into this stuff, and they could be absorbing this through a number of different channels, and I don't think I'm really doing a good job at introducing new people to reverse engineering, or having more agency over the devices in their lives, or anything that really matters to me right now. I just feel like it's just another low-quality treehouse for nerds, which is absolutely not what I want to create right now. So I'm going to think about how to make this better, and I'll get back to you folks later.